The rain drummed against the cracked window of Valeria's tiny apartment, each drop echoing the heaviness in her heart. Her fingers trembled as she unpacked the last of her meager possessions, a framed photo of her son Tomas, a worn leather journal, and a teaching certificate that had cost her everything to obtain. The dingy Chicago apartment was barely large enough for a bed and desk, with peeling wallpaper that revealed years of other people's lives beneath. Outside, the city skyline glittered with possibilities that seemed to mock her through the rain-streaked glass. Valeria pressed her palm against the cold window, her reflection revealing dark circles under her eyes and worry lines that had deepened with each passing day since she'd fled Columbia. Tomorrow would be her first day teaching at Westridge Elementary School. A fresh start, she told herself, though the emptiness in her chest, where Tomas should be, threatened to swallow her whole. The next morning arrived with unforgiving swiftness. Valeria stood at the school gates, clutching her worn leather satchel as parents dropped off their children. She straightened her only formal outfit, a navy skirt and white blouse she'd carefully hand-washed the night before, and tried to calm the anxiety churning in her stomach. "Foreigners like you come here to take our jobs," a woman with perfectly styled blonde hair whispered as she passed, just loud enough for other parents to hear. The words sliced through Valeria like a knife, but she kept her chin high, even as she felt the weight of judgmental stares following her into the building. Principal Morris gave her a perfunctory tour of the school, his indifference palpable, as he gestured vaguely toward her classroom. "The Suarez family donated our entire library wing," he noted, pointing to a plaque on the wall. "Their daughter Luna is in your class. I suggest you make a good impression." The warning in his voice was clear. If you are enjoying the story, type 5 in the comments and subscribe for more videos like this. If not, type 0. It helps me create even better content for you. Continuing. Valeria's classroom was a battleground from day one. 20 faces stared at her with varying degrees of curiosity and hostility as she introduced herself, her accent thickening with nervousness. "I'm Ms. Rodriguez, your new teacher. I'm originally from Colombia." A boy in the back row snickered, mimicking her pronunciation. Heat rushed to her cheeks, but years of hiding her emotions helped her maintain composure. As the children worked on their assignments, Valeria noticed one girl who hadn't spoken a word, Luna Suarez. Unlike her classmates in their designer clothes, Luna's uniform hung slightly loose on her small frame, despite its obvious quality. Her dark brown eyes held a sadness too profound for a child so young, and she flinched when Valeria approached. Her desk. "Would you like some help?" Valeria asked softly. Luna shook her head and returned to her paper, but not before Valeria noticed the meticulously drawn lines connecting her sentences, as if order could somehow hold her world together. That evening, Valeria's apartment felt even smaller, the walls closing in as she heated instant noodles on her hot plate. She'd spent her last few dollars on supplies for her students, leaving nothing for a proper dinner. As she ate, she reviewed Luna's work from that day, an essay about family that had remained conspicuously blank. The school files had mentioned that Luna's mother had died in an accident the previous year, but offered no details. There was something in the girl's silence that resonated with Valeria's own grief, the absence that shaped every moment, every breath. She fell asleep at her desk, her cheek pressed against Luna's empty paper, dreams of Tomas's laughter slipping through her fingers like smoke. The weeks passed in a blur of lesson plans, whispered comments, and the growing isolation that wrapped around Valeria like a second skin. The other teachers avoided her in the staff room, conversations halting when she entered. One morning she found "Go Home" scrawled across her desk, the letters jagged and accusing. She wiped it away before her students arrived, swallowing the knot in her throat. That same day, as rain lashed against the windows, Luna raised her hand for the first time. "Ms. Rodriguez," she said, her voice barely audible, "can I read my new essay?" The class fell silent as Luna stood, her paper clutched, in trembling hands. "My mother loved storms," she began. "She said they washed the world clean and gave everything a second chance." By the time Luna finished reading, tears streamed down Valeria's face, matching those of the girl before her. Outside the classroom, A tall figure lingered in the hallway. Martín Suárez, watching his daughter speak for the first time in months, his expression a complex mixture of gratitude and suspicion. Will Luna's breakthrough bring Valeria closer to acceptance, or will the hostility at Westridge Elementary only intensify? And what secrets might be revealed when the wealthy Martín Suárez takes a deeper interest in the foreign teacher who's reached his daughter when no one else could? The following week brought parent-teacher conferences and with them a fresh wave of anxiety. Valeria prepared meticulously, arranging student work samples and practicing her English until her throat was raw. Most parents hurried through their appointments, barely making eye contact. When Martín Suárez entered the classroom, his presence seemed to fill the space entirely. Dressed in an impeccably tailored suit, he carried himself with the unshakable confidence of a man accustomed to power. "Ms. Rodriguez," he said, his voice deep and measured, "I understand my daughter has been different in your class." Valeria motioned for him to sit, acutely aware of the contrast between his custom Italian shoes and her worn flats. "Luna is brilliant," she replied, sliding over a folder of her work, "and she's starting to open up." Martín's eyes narrowed slightly as he studied Valeria. Her previous teachers said she was withdrawn, possibly depressed. His tone carried an accusation, as if Valeria's success where others had failed was somehow suspicious. Before she could respond, a commotion erupted in the hallway. "She shouldn't be teaching American children." The harsh voice belonged to Catherine Miller, mother of Valeria's most disruptive student. "I heard she was in prison in Colombia. What kind of school hires criminals?" Martín watched as the color drained from Valeria's face, her hands instinctively gathering her papers, preparing for flight. The reaction told him everything. There was truth to the accusation. As Principal Morris attempted to calm the situation, Valeria excused herself, her composure cracking. Martín found her in the empty library, staring out at the rainy playground. "Is it true?" he asked without preamble. Valeria didn't turn. 3 days, she said, her voice hollow. "I spent 3 days in jail for contempt of court during my custody hearing. My ex-husband is a judge. He took my son, then made sure I couldn't fight back. When I shouted that the system was corrupt, they silenced me." She finally faced him, her eyes dry but haunted. "So yes, Mr. Suárez, I was in prison. Does that satisfy your curiosity?" Martín's expression remained unreadable as he studied the woman before him, small in stature but unbending, broken but not defeated. Something stirred in him, recognition perhaps of the same fierce protectiveness he felt for Luna. Is it possible to rebuild a life from fragments? Can trust bloom in the shadow of prejudice? As Valeria's past threatens to destroy her fragile new beginning, an unexpected bond forms between her and the city's most powerful family. But at what cost? The rumors spread through Westridge Elementary like wildfire. Students whispered as Valeria passed in the hallways, and several parents requested their children be transferred to different classes. Principal Morris called her to his office, his expression grave. "Ms. Rodriguez, these allegations are concerning. The board is meeting next week to discuss your position." His words were carefully chosen, but the message was clear. Her days were numbered. That afternoon, as Valeria packed her bag, fighting back tears of frustration, a small hand tugged at her skirt. Luna stood beside her desk, clutching a drawing. "This is for you," she said, placing the paper in Valeria's hands. It showed 3 stick figures, a tall man, a little girl, and a woman with curly hair like Valeria's. "That's Dad, me, and you," Luna explained, pointing to each figure. "Will you come to my birthday party on Saturday? Dad said I could invite you." The invitation, so innocently delivered, felt like a lifeline thrown into churning waters. Martín Suárez's mansion stood in stark contrast to Valeria's tiny apartment. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over marble floors, and floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a stunning view of Lake Michigan. Valeria clutched her modest gift, a handmade storybook, feeling painfully out of place among the wealthy guests. Luna, however, rushed to greet her, pulling her through the crowd to a table piled high with presents. "Ms. Rodriguez!" A sharp voice cut through the chatter. Catherine Miller approached, champagne flute in hand. "How..." Brave of you to show your face here." Before Valeria could respond, Martin appeared beside her. "Ms. Rodriguez is here at my daughter's personal request," he said, his tone brooking no argument. "She's an honored guest in my home." Catherine's smile turned brittle as she retreated, and Valeria felt Martin's hand briefly touch her back, a gesture of protection that sent an unexpected warmth through her. Later, as Luna blew out her candles, Valeria watched from the sidelines. Martin stood across the room, his gaze intense as it rested on her. He'd been watching her all evening, the way she knelt to speak with Luna, how she politely deflected probing questions from curious guests, the quiet dignity she maintained despite being clearly uncomfortable in such opulent surroundings. When the party ended and the guests departed, Luna begged Valeria to stay. "Just a little longer, please." Martin nodded his permission, and the three of them sat in the kitchen, eating leftover cake as Luna chattered excitedly about her presence. In that moment, surrounded by warmth and acceptance, Valeria allowed herself to hope, a dangerous feeling for someone who had lost so much. Have you ever felt like an outsider looking in at a world that seemed determined to reject you? Or perhaps you know someone who faced discrimination for being different? Take a moment to share your experience in the comments below. The school. Board meeting loomed like a storm on the horizon. Valeria tried to focus on her lessons, savoring what might be her final days with her students. Luna blossomed more each day, raising her hand, smiling occasionally, even joining other children during recess. It was a transformation that hadn't gone unnoticed. Several parents commented on the positive change in their own children's attitudes towards school. Yet the whispers persisted, growing louder as the meeting approached. "Criminal," they said. "Foreigner," they muttered. "Not our kind," they concluded. Each word was a stone added to the wall being built around her. The night before the meeting, a knock at her apartment door startled Valeria. Martin Suarez stood in the dingy hallway, looking incongruous in his expensive coat. "May I come?" "Taitui," he asked. Valeria hesitated, acutely aware of her surroundings. The water stain on the ceiling, the hot plate serving as her kitchen, the narrow bed that doubled as her sofa. Pride nearly made her refuse, but she stepped aside. Martin entered, his eyes taking in every detail of her poverty, though his expression remained neutral. "I've been investigating," he said without preamble. "Your ex-husband, the custody case, your arrest." Anger flashed through Valeria. "You had no right—" "I needed to know the truth," he interrupted, "for Luna's sake." He placed a folder on her desk. "What I found was a mother silenced for fighting corruption, a woman punished for demanding justice." His voice softened. "I'm going to speak at the meeting tomorrow. Will you trust me to tell your story?" The board meeting room was packed when Valeria arrived. She sat alone in the back row, feeling the weight of hostile stares. Principal Morris presented the concerns raised by parents, his careful wording barely disguising the prejudice beneath. When Catherine Miller spoke, her voice dripped with false concern. "We simply want to ensure our children are taught by individuals with appropriate backgrounds." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Then Martin Suarez rose, commanding the room with his presence. "My daughter lost her mother last year," he began, his voice steady. "She stopped speaking, stopped engaging with the world. No amount of therapy helped. Then Ms. Rodriguez arrived." He turned to look directly at Valeria. "Within weeks, my daughter was reading essays aloud. She was drawing again, laughing." He faced the board, his expression hardening. "You want to fire the best teacher this school has ever had because of rumors and xenophobia? Because she dared to stand up to corruption in her home country?" The room fell silent. "If Ms. Rodriguez leaves, so does the Suarez family's support, all of it." The threat hung in the air, weighted with the power of millions in donations. Could this unexpected alliance between a struggling immigrant and Chicago's wealthiest widower survive the scrutiny of a society determined to keep them apart? As trust grows between Valeria and Martin, what new challenges await? Spring arrived in Chicago, bringing with it a tentative renewal. The board had voted to retain Valeria, though the atmosphere at school remained tense. Some parents had withdrawn, their children in protest, but others, seeing the positive changes in Luna and her classmates, began to offer smiles instead of scowls. Valeria's small apartment now featured a vase of fresh flowers each week, delivered anonymously, though she suspected their source. On weekends, Luna often invited her to museums or parks, Martin accompanying them with growing ease. Gradually, his formal reserve softened into something warmer. They spoke of their pasts, his wife's sudden death from an aneurysm, the crushing loneliness of single parenthood, his struggle to connect with Luna through her grief. In turn, Valeria shared stories of Tomas, the custody battle that had bankrupted her, the devastating choice to leave Colombia to build a life that might someday allow her to reclaim her son. One evening, as they walked along Lake Michigan, after taking Luna to a concert, Martin asked the question Valeria had been dreading. "Why don't you appeal the custody ruling?" The gentle waves lapped at the shore, mirroring the anxiety rippling through her. "My ex-husband controls the local courts," she explained. "Any appeal would be denied before it was heard. And I have nothing left. No money, no connections." Martin stopped walking, turning to face her. "What if you had both?" The offer hung between them, complex in its implications. Valeria shook her head. "I can't accept that kind of help." "Why not?" he challenged. "Because I've fought my own battles for so long that accepting help feels like surrendering," she admitted. "Or because you're afraid of what it might mean?" Martin asked softly. The question hovered in the air, laden with unspoken possibilities. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Valeria's hands shook as she listened to the Colombian lawyer explain that new evidence had emerged in her ex-husband's corruption case. A retrial of her custody hearing was possible if she could return to Bogotá immediately and navigate the legal proceedings in person. Hope and terror warred within her as she contemplated returning to the place of her deepest wounds. That evening, she paced her apartment, calculating the impossibility of the airfare, the legal fees, the time away from work. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Martin stood at her door, Luna beside him. "We brought dinner," Luna announced, holding up a bag of takeout. As they ate at Valeria's small desk, she found herself sharing news of the lawyer's call. "I can't go," she concluded. "It's impossible." Martin wiped his mouth deliberately before speaking. "I disagree," he said. "My company's jet flies to South America regularly. My legal team has connections in Colombian courts. All you need to do is say yes. Will Valeria risk everything on this chance to reunite with her son? And as her connection with Martin and Luna deepens, what new complications might arise in her fight for justice?" The Bogotá courthouse loomed before Valeria, its imposing facade a stark reminder of her previous defeat. Despite Martin's reassurances, fear clawed at her throat as she entered the building. The hearing progressed with agonizing slowness, legal arguments flying back and forth like arrows. When her ex-husband entered, Judge Eduardo Reyes, still handsome and commanding, Valeria felt herself shrink beneath his contemptuous gaze. Then she thought of Luna's courage, of Martin's unwavering support, and straightened her spine. This time she was not alone. This time she had truth on her side, and resources to fight. The new evidence was damning, recordings of Eduardo, threatening other judges, financial transactions proving bribery. When Valeria took the stand, her voice remained steady as she recounted the years of manipulation and abuse. Outside the courtroom, reporters gathered, drawn by the scandal involving one of Colombia's most powerful judges. Eduardo's face darkened with rage as he realized his carefully constructed facade was crumbling. The victory, when it came, was bittersweet. The judge ruled in Valeria's favor, granting her full custody of Tomas. But Eduardo, desperate and cornered, made a final, vicious move. As Valeria prepared to collect her son from school, police intercepted her, arresting her on fabricated charges of attempted kidnapping. From her cell, she made one frantic call to Martin. "He's blocked me again," she sobbed. "Tomas is still with his grandparents, and I'm in jail." Martin's voice was calm, resolute. "Stay strong. I'm on my way." True to his word, he arrived in Bogotá the next day, bringing with him a team of international lawyers, and more importantly, evidence of Eduardo's latest corruption. The charges against Valeria were dismissed, but the damage was done. The delay had given Eduardo time to flee with Tomas, disappearing into the vastness of rural Colombia. For 10 agonizing days, private investigators searched for Tomas. Valeria and Martin worked tirelessly with authorities, following every lead, enduring each disappointment together. It was Luna who provided the breakthrough, remembering a conversation about Eduardo's family cabin in the mountains. "Dad," she said during one of their daily video calls, "Ms. Rodriguez once told me her husband's mother had a special place where the birds sang differently. Can you check there?" The cabin, nestled in a remote valley, was indeed where they found Tomas, a solemn 7-year-old with Valeria's eyes and a wariness beyond his years. The reunion was tearful, complicated by Tomas's confusion and the trauma of separation. Valeria held her son, feeling the pieces of her heart slowly beginning to realign, while Martin stood back, giving them space to reconnect. The journey back to Chicago was quiet, each passenger lost in their own thoughts. Tomas gazed out the plane window, occasionally asking questions about his new home, his new school. "Will I like it there?" he asked, his Spanish soft and hesitant. Valeria squeezed his hand. "I think you will, mi amor, and Luna is very excited to meet you." At the mention of Luna, Martin smiled, the warmth reaching his eyes. "She's turned her playroom into a welcome space for you," he told Tomas. "With Colombian flags and books about soccer." It was a small gesture, but it brought the first genuine smile to Tomas's face. As the city lights of Chicago appeared below them, Valeria felt a tentative peace settling over her. The future remained uncertain, full of challenges. Tomas's adjustment, her precarious position at school, the complex emotions evolving between her and Martin. But for now, for this moment, she allowed herself to believe in second chances. What secrets might Tomas bring from his years apart from his mother? And as this unconventional family takes its first tentative steps forward, will the wounds of the past finally begin to heal? Luna's reaction to Tomas was instantaneous and unexpected. "My brother," she cried, throwing her arms around the startled boy. Tomas stiffened, looking to his mother for guidance, but something in Luna's enthusiastic welcome penetrated his reserve. By the end of their first afternoon together, the children had established a fragile connection, communicating through a mixture of Spanish, English, and shared experience of loss. Watching them from the kitchen of Martin's home, Valeria felt a lump form in her throat. "She's never taken to anyone so quickly," Martin murmured, standing close enough that Valeria could feel the warmth radiating from him. "Neither has Tomas," she replied. "He's usually so cautious with strangers." Their eyes met, an understanding passing between them. Their children, both damaged by circumstances beyond their control, had recognized in each other a kindred spirit. It was a beginning. The following weeks brought adjustments and revelations. Tomas enrolled at Westridge Elementary, his presence causing a fresh wave of gossip. Catherine Miller wasted no time in pointing out that the criminal teacher had brought her foreign child into the school. But the tide of opinion had shifted. Other parents, seeing the positive changes in Luna, defended Valeria's right to have her son with her. Tomas, for his part, struggled with English and with trust, clinging to his mother and retreating into silence when overwhelmed. It was Luna who coaxed him out of his shell, teaching him English words, defending him fiercely against playground taunts. And it was Martin who surprised them all by learning Spanish, practicing awkwardly with Tomas over chess games and model airplane construction. Summer arrived with its own rhythm, bringing longer days and new possibilities. Martin invited Valeria and Tomas to stay at his lake house for a week, an offer she initially resisted. "People will talk," she pointed out. His response was immediate and untroubled. "Let them." The days by the lake blurred together in a haze of sunshine and laughter as the children swam and built sandcastles, their friendship deepening into something that resembled family. In the evenings, after Luna and Tomas had fallen asleep, Valeria and Martin sat on the deck, talking long into the night. They spoke of their hopes and fears, of the scars they carried and the dreams they still nurtured. On their last night, at the lake, beneath a sky scattered with stars, Martin reached for Valeria's hand, "I haven't felt this way since Maria died," he confessed, his voice rough with emotion. "It terrifies me." Valeria interlaced her fingers with his, understanding completely. "Me too," she whispered. "But perhaps being terrified together is better than being safely alone." Their return to Chicago brought challenges to their tentative happiness. Eduardo, facing criminal charges in Colombia, launched a smear campaign against Valeria, sending anonymous evidence of her unfitness to Principal Morris and the school board. The allegations were vicious and false, but they reignited the suspicion that had never fully dissipated. Once again, Valeria found herself defending her character, her past, her right to build a future in this new country. The strain showed. In her growing quietness, in the shadows that returned to her eyes. Tomas sensed his mother's distress, his nightmares returning with a vengeance. Only with Luna and Martín did they find moments of peace, brief respites from the battle that seemed endless. The final confrontation came in the most unexpected way. As summer drew to a close, Westridge Elementary held its annual back-to-school picnic. Valeria arrived with Tomas, her steps hesitant. Martín and Luna were already there, saving a spot for them beneath an oak tree. As Valeria approached, she noticed Catherine Miller and several other parents watching, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and lingering hostility. Before she could reach Martín, Catherine intercepted her. "Ms. Rodriguez," she began, her tone falsely bright. "There's been some disturbing information circulating about your situation. The board is reconsidering your position." The threat was clear, the malice unmistakable. But before Valeria could respond, a small voice cut through the tension. "Leave my family alone." Luna stood beside her, eyes flashing with indignation. "Ms. Rodriguez is a good person. She makes my dad happy. She helps Tomas not be afraid anymore." The child's fierce defense, delivered in front of the gathered community, created a ripple of murmurs. Martín moved to stand beside them, Tomas clutching his hand tightly. "My daughter," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet gathering, has excellent judgment. In that moment, looking at the four of them standing together, Martín tall and resolute, Luna fierce in her loyalty, Tomas finding his courage, and Valeria at the center, her heart full, something shifted in the atmosphere. Catherine Miller's face flushed with embarrassment as other parents moved away from her, distancing themselves from her cruelty. Principal Morris, witnessing the scene, approached with a strained smile. "Ms. Rodriguez," he said, loud enough for others to hear, "we're looking forward to another excellent year with you at Westridge." The words were hollow, motivated by fear of losing Martín's financial support, but they represented a public acceptance that had been long in coming. That evening, as the children played in Martín's garden, he turned to Valeria with a question that had been forming for months. "Will you move in with us?" The invitation was both simple and profound, an acknowledgement of the family they had become against all odds. Valeria, thinking of her tiny apartment with its peeling walls and single window, hesitated. That space, meager as it was, represented her independence, her survival. "Only if I can keep my apartment," she finally answered, as a reminder that I made it, that we made it. Martín nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Your courage is one of the reasons I love you," he said quietly, the words slipping out naturally as if he'd been saying them for years. Months later, Tomas stood proudly on the stage at Westridge Elementary's winter concert, delivering his lines in clear, confident English. In the audience, Valeria clutched Martín's hand, tears blurring her vision as she watched her son shine. Luna sat on Martín's other side, beaming with pride at her brother's performance. They were not a conventional family, formed not by blood but by choice, by shared struggles, by the recognition of one another's worth when the world had tried to diminish them. They carried scars, each of them visible and invisible. There were still whispers, still battles to be fought. Tomas still had nightmares. Luna still fell into periods of grief for her mother. Valeria and Martín still navigated the complexities of building trust after profound loss. But they had found in each other something precious, the courage to begin again, to see beyond labels and prejudice, to choose love over fear. Someone who sees you, Luna had written in her latest essay, even when the world tells them not to. That's family. Valeria, reading those words, had felt a profound gratitude wash over her. For the journey that had brought her here, for every struggle that had shaped her strength, and for the little girl who had taught her that family could be created in the most unexpected ways. As they left the school that night, stepping into the gentle fall of snow, Tomas slipped his hand into Martin's while Luna tucked herself against Valeria's side. Above them, the Chicago sky stretched vast and star-filled, a reminder of all the possibilities still waiting to unfold. "Let's go home," Valeria said, the word no longer foreign on her tongue. Home, not a place, but these people. This love. This second chance that had found her when she least expected it, when she had been poor and foreign and alone. This miracle of being seen, truly seen, and called family. Congratulations. Type 9 in the comments, so that I know you stayed until the end with me. Thank you for watching, and until tomorrow's story on this same channel.